Charlotte, and we're kind of inland in North Carolina. But like the beaches and the coastal areas, the Myrtle beaches and all those areas are pretty flooded right now. But so far we're hanging in there. The worst it's gonna get over here is probably like just heavy wind and knocking trees down, which would lead to power outages. So at any moment I can go out on this podcast.
So we're gonna try to get all the good stuff in first, but I mean that is the first major hurricane to hit the United States this year, and I've been in them. They're not fun. Hurricane Sandy, or tropical storm, or whatever they called it, like 6 years ago, was pretty bad. Not from my area, but pretty much everything around it was really bad, because again, New York is basically anything on the coastline is just going to get flooded.
Yeah.
And Eddie, you do not have to deal with hurricanes, do you? Maybe just the stray earthquake once in a while.
No, we have to deal with earthquakes. We have this thing over here where we're just waiting for that big one to come, but the big one has not come yet. we get little, like a couple of weeks ago, I was just sitting in my living room and it just started shaking. It wasn't like a really bad earthquake, but it just started shaking. But it went too long for my liking. But yeah, we just gotta deal with earthquakes over here.
I think it's interesting because I remember when that happened, and I follow a ton of people who live in California, and everyone sent out a tweet at the same time, like, "Is this the big one? Is this the big one?" I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, I saw a lot of those. So like, I got on Twitter and everybody's like, "Hey, did everybody feel it? Was that an earthquake?" And then everybody starts making light of the situation. But yeah, we just got to deal with earthquakes here in California. No tropical storms, no tornadoes, none of that, snowstorms.
We get the snowstorms, and it's always we go right from we have the mild chance of there ever being a hurricane. It happens like once every 6-7 years or so, but snow is every year. So feet and feet of snow, and it seems to get sort of worse and worse every year. We just get these 11, 12-inch, snowstorms. You go to Boston, you're getting like 30 feet of snow. It's like, it's hard to imagine that much snow, but, we do deal with it in somewhat. Although I have to say I live in a great part of the country where all the bad stuff can happen, but it rarely ever does. So I'm fairly happy with that. John, Jordan Brand and PSG have collaborated to create a 50-piece collection. I thought this would be the better show to talk about this on. So your initial impressions of what PSG and Jordan have been able to sort of do here. Because I love it. I am an unabashed capitalist in this sense, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's one of those things as a football fan and as a PSG fan. It made me really excited. Like, it was one of the few things that I was really excited about so far this season, even though it's not really an on-pitch thing. But it was fascinating because we kind of knew this was happening, right? Like, we kind of heard and saw the leaked photos of the kits that they are going to be wearing during the Champions League. And then, when it finally happens and in the PSG's official site announces it, there's kind of this like euphoric feeling like, yo, this is dope on so many levels, because and one of the more fascinating things that I found about it was just as I was looking through my timeline, there were people who weren't familiar with the Jordan brand, and I thought that was a little interesting. And it kind of goes into why this deal is so important, because it's not solely for PSG's brand exposure, right? It's also for Jordan Brand to announce themselves to an entirely new market. So I think from that standpoint, it's a very good business plan. It's very layered. People are going to think, oh, this is just a money move. Like, nah, this has kind of been in the works for a while. Jordan has done a deal with Neymar already for a shoe they did in like 2016. So I feel like that had something to do with this essentially happening. But there's some real cool pieces. It's just unique. A Jordan, a basketball brand on a football shirt, that's just a first, and it's really cool from a branding standpoint. And we'll see what other deals come out of it, but it's really, really, really cool to see.
In the United States, I mean, we grew up with Jordan Brand, and it being the biggest, subsidiary of Nike and the biggest sports brand in the world in a lot of ways, because Michael Jordan, and I guess it's hard sometimes for people in Europe to maybe understand this exactly, but Michael Jordan in the late 90s and the early 2000s was the biggest sports icon in the world. And
absolutely.
That still carries over today. He's still one of the biggest. It's been 15 years since he last played basketball, and he's still the biggest basketball brand. LeBron's brand isn't bigger. Steph Curry's brand isn't bigger. 15 years later, it's still Michael Jordan, and that sort of, I think, speaks to his level of fame and his ability to market that brand. And PSG, to get along with that and to sign a 3-year exclusive deal. I mean, I'm watching right now, Oklahoma's wearing Jumpman jerseys, and they're, these are major American brands, and PSG's goal in all of this is to be a major brand outside of the European market, because it's a place where they can grow. I mean, it's like, you're not going to convince a person growing up in the South, on the South Coast to root for PSG over Marseille. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can damn sure convince a kid from Southern California or Texas or China or Japan to, pick up PSG. Like, that's the whole marketing strategy of it, Eddie. It's not complicated, and I think people try to make it more complicated than it is. PSG are trying to become a globally known brand, and that comes with a lot of sort of intricate deals that they're going to have to make, and this is really, I think, the first domino to fall in that.
Yeah, some people forget, PSG's 40 years old, and, they're a middle-aged person, in our years, and so, they don't have this history that, other clubs rely on, so they're going about it a different way, and, they're putting themselves out there. In the last 2 months, we've seen a lot of pop culture PSG references, whether it be J. Cole in a music video, Beyonce wearing a customized PSG kit, Travis Scott wearing one of the Jordan brand, combo basketball jerseys.
Yeah.
They're going about it a different way. They know right now they can't rely too much on their history, so they're gonna, and eventually they're not gonna be able to have this oil money to spend anymore. So they don't want the funds to be cut off. So, they're making shrewd business moves that is important in football. It's just not what happens on the pitch that people seem to get caught on. A lot of the negatives that I saw about this were, they should spend this time, focusing on what's on the field. But, again, like we talked about in the transfer stuff, there's business, just business aspects and ventures that PSG is just, I think they're beating every club to it. I mean, Jordan could have gone with more, prestigious clubs, but instead chose PSG. So that just shows that, the business side of it, PSG's they're just, killing it with all these, all free publicity, and I think it's just going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I'll make this point too, which is this deal doesn't happen if Neymar is at Barcelona. This is a Neymar-driven deal in a few ways. In that, I think you could have given the Jordan brand to Barcelona. You could have done a deal with Barcelona, who's been who's I would say a more high-profile Nike football client. But the difference is, Barcelona didn't have the cool players. They don't have the brand. They have Messi, but Messi's not really cool. You don't see Messi as cool to me. I think he's great, but he's not cool. And Neymar is cool, and Mbappe is cool, and being in Paris is cool. And it's this convergence of these major mega stars with this mega city, with this mega brand. And I find it a little, and I want you in on this, John, because I feel like there's some traditionalists who just don't get it. You can explain it to them 8 different ways, but they just don't understand how, big this is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of also points out how bold this move is for PSG. And I actually wrote a piece about this a couple of days ago, and it should be on the site soon, about the whole, gave a little backstory with the Jordan brand and how this entire deal happens. But it's bold from PSG standpoint when we know they're very passionate and for the football, and they don't care about any of this fancy shit, right? Like, and I understand that, and that's respectable. But again, this is a business. Like them branding themselves off the pitch is not as important, but it's nearly as important as them winning the Champions League. And again, right? Like, so I think that part is going to be hard for PSG to kind of usurp or trying to get the fans on board with that aspect. So I don't even really think that's anything they should focus on. But I saw a lot of people was like, what about the Nike sponsorship, right? They don't even know that Jordan brand is part of Nike, right? So it's all under the same umbrella. Like, nothing changes there. And again, it all makes sense, and it all happens because you have a Neymar and a killer. This is a cool team to root for. And, living here in the South of America, I live in the South, essentially, and, you won't see many PSG kids, but you're going to see a Barcelona kid, you're going to see a Manchester United kid, you're going to see a Real Madrid kid. This is where PSG is trying to get. They're trying to level themselves up within that hierarchy, but they're doing it in the 2018 way of being in tune with what's cool and how to grab people's attention. And you do it through pop culture, through music, through fashion. And Paris being one of the most fashion-conscious cities, it just makes sense. And, at the end of the day, it comes down to this is a business. Like, at the end of the day, it is a business, and they're making a hell of a business move. Like, it's like for the PSG fans who are purists, it's okay to celebrate a win off the pitch because it's all going to coincide at the end.
Yeah, it's important to understand that before this type of branding and marketing it was unheard of for a French club before Paris Saint-Germain. Marseille didn't get these types of marketing even when they were good in the 80s and the 90s. They didn't get any of this. And I understand that marketing and all that stuff has changed over the last 20, 30 years, and it's just gotten so much bigger. But you go back to the 98 World Cup, and there was no team in France that was capable financially or structurally of taking advantage of it and growing the brand of French football beyond just sort of the national team. And what you got was a 2000s where basically the only team that was any way competent was Lyon, and they won 7 in a row. We talk about PSG's dominance. Lyon won the title 7 years in a row because basically most French teams were broke.
Yeah.
And Lyon was the only team that could actually financially prop up a youth academy to, build a team through. And then you had those years where it was like Montpellier won it once, Lille won it once, Marseille won it once, and it was like, that wasn't good for French football. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that look back on those years going, yeah, that was really, talk about the parity and be like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'm like, no. Like, football is built on super teams. It's built on stars. That's how the marketing grows. That's how it's worked for 30, 40 years. And PSG are firmly able to, I think, take advantage of what the French national team did in 2018 this year.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to Eddie, because Eddie uses this term a lot when he talks about being for the culture. And I think there's never been a more... How do I put this? Because maybe I'm not the right person to say this, but there's never been a more black team than this 2018 French national team. There's never been sort of a team that has embraced its cultural diversity in a way where it was more unapologetic than anything we'd ever seen before. Like, this was different. This was not the same old team winning the World Cup. This wasn't Germany winning it or Spain winning it or Italy winning it. This was a totally different thing. And PSG right now, Eddie, are, I think, in a really good spot to just take advantage of this and be that team for the culture, be that team for the pop culture of 2018.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we've seen so much, PSG merchandise in pop culture these last couple of months. Whether it's just not hip hop. We saw Justin Timberlake, in Paris, rocking that. He was wearing that PSG jacket, PSG Jordan jacket. So it's kind of weird that it's just been like it just happened so fast for me. I'm not sure how you guys see it, but everything just happened so fast. Like every week or every couple of days, we're just bombarded with celebrities just wearing that PSG logo, and it's just they're taking advantage of the French, with the French national team. They have the poster child in Kylian Mbappe that they're marketing the heck out of, and as well as Neymar. They're these last couple of days where they unveiled the Jordan brand collaboration. It's just been Kylian Mbappe and Neymar at the forefront at every promotional video or photos.
Yeah, and another way I wanted to look at it, and I mentioned this in the piece, is almost it's a big middle finger to UEFA, this collaboration, inadvertently, right? Because think about it, the kits are only going to be worn during the Champions League, which is governed by UEFA, and there's like reported, I think the AFP said they're going to generate over $200 million euros per year with this collaboration. And when you think about Neymar being the trigger to this UEFA investigation, and then him having the history he has with Jordan Brand, which essentially, made this deal happen. All of that kind of, I think, is pretty interesting and fascinating to see how that kind of comes back in the fold as well with UEFA's investigation. And again, I think it's a big middle finger to them, whether it's directly or indirectly, in the way it is. And I think I just saw, I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, where UEFA said that PSG, were in line with all of the, everything they needed to do. So it's a win all the way around. Except for, I guess, on the pitch. But again, this collaboration is not going to get us midfield. It's not going to help us beat Liverpool at Anfield. But it's so important in so many other ways. And you're hustling backwards if you don't support that as a Paris supporter.
And if people act like winning the Champions League is this sort of, it's strange because it is a hard thing to do, and it's become harder over the years. But I do feel like in a certain way, getting this sort of marketing deal going and just sort of building this brand from essentially the ground up has almost been harder in a lot of ways than actually winning the Champions League, in the sense that you take a team that was basically breaking even for years and wasn't exactly a marketing power, you infuse money into it, and you do basically what Manchester City did in England, which was take this sort of nothing brand and turn it into this sort of global, multinational deal. And I find that admirable in the sense that it's not something that's done all the time. Basically, you look at the teams that have done it in the 21st century, it's really been PSG, Manchester City, the Golden State Warriors of the NBA. Like, those are the teams that you see that kind of went from nothing to being these powerhouses. Yeah. And a lot of it had to do with what they did on the field and on the court, but a lot of it was about building stars and about marketing properly.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, John, that this is a statement to UEFA and to FIFA and to the rest of Europe, and to say, PSG aren't going anywhere. We're not this sort of flash-in-the-pan deal. We have the exclusive rights to this brand that has been growing and growing and growing basically since Jordan put out the first sneakers in '85.
Yeah.
And it's saying to, I think, a lot of people that PSG is taken seriously by major worldwide brands. They're not, they don't have to get they don't have to have their kit sponsored by Emirates anymore. They don't need to have their, Qatari Tourism Board sponsorship that was worth that they said was worth like $200 million, but it's really worth like $50 million or whatever UEFA sponsored valuation said it was. That's the statement that it makes, which is, and that's the direct statement that it makes, which is, we don't need the Qatar money. We can do this without the Qatar money. If you want to take that money away from us, see what we just did with Jordan? We could do that with every major brand in the United States and around the world.
Exactly.
Because we have Neymar, because we have Kylian Mbappe, we don't need that money. And all that, and that's the way that they were being attacked through this financial fair play for the last 5 years or so. It was always about the sponsorship. And now PSG saying, we don't need the sponsorship, and that's the key.
Yeah, I think it was Jonathan Johnson who tweeted out that in the first day where people were able to buy these Jordan kits, they sold like 2-point-something million. It was 2 million euros. I think it was 2.8 million euros. So, in just one day, the sky's the limit for this deal in these next 3 years. People are just going to gobble everything up, whether it's the kits or the other stuff that was announced. Because, like John said, Paris is a city of fashion. Right now, they got it right with these kits and everything else that was released with it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually do Jordan brand for all their jerseys. I really wouldn't be surprised at that. I think that would be the next step.
Yeah, not at all. Like that would be that'd be a good idea actually, and it's probably in the works. Who knows? But I wanted to point out, like, because I've also seen a lot of league. I follow a lot of people who cover other Ligue 1 teams, and they obviously look down upon this, and I just find that as like some hating. That's just hating, because essentially this just is gonna grow the brand of Ligue 1. You know what I mean? So it's like you're hating on something that's gonna, bring up your team, that your club that you love so much as well. So this is not something to solely look into, without any peripheral. It's like I understand you don't like PSG, you don't like the fact that all this money is being pumped into this team, and they're pretty much running away with the league every year, but these type of deals are what brings up a league like Ligue 1 and all these other teams of Marseille and Monaco and Lyon. Their brand exposure is going to go up as well, because once eyes are on PSG, eyes are also going to be on these other teams. So it's important to keep that in mind, but it's hard to do that when you're hating.
Just look at the television deal. It's not hard. It's just look at the television deal, and a lot of that is the kind of European caste system idea that if you root for, you're happy if let's say theoretically you root for Rennes. Now I'm just pulling a random. Yeah. No, I'm not pulling a random. I'm actually talking about a specific person, Rich Allen.
Yeah.
Let's say you root for Rennes.
Yeah.
And you're very happy with Rennes being where Rennes is, and Rennes will always be where Rennes is. They will be mid-table. Maybe they'll get a European spot once in a while. They'll get some Europa League games. They have no shot of winning the league at all, really. But you're happy with just rooting for the team. Whatever the reason is, you root for the team. You root for the team. Or Jeremy Smith, who roots for a now Division II team, Metz. I'm just going to call him out by name. Why not? It's this sort of where we got on this thing when it wasn't cool, and now that it's cool, we have to make sure to kind of keep everybody in check and sort of be the judge and jury of what is acceptable for Ligue 1 and what's not, and what's good for the league and what's not. Very much like MLS snobs, Yeah. And I'll get on this too, because I want to kind of start transitioning a little bit, but it's that soccer snobbery that I think is so bad for the game and held it back in this country and in other countries for a long, long time, which is like I kind of compare it to like the Save the Crew people. And I know I'm probably going to get hate for this, but teams move all the time. Sports teams move all the time. And in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, they moved even more than they move now.
Uh-huh.
Like, there used to be the St. Louis Cardinals, then they were the Arizona Cardinals. You talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers, they used to be the Brooklyn Dodgers. The San Francisco Giants used to be the New York Giants. You had teams move from Philadelphia to Boston to Atlanta. It's like, this is nothing new. Teams move all the time because it's a business. If you have a pizza shop and you have it in a bad neighborhood, or a bad neighborhood for pizza places, let's say there's like 6 of them around, and you try to put a pizza place there and it doesn't do well, what are you going to do? You're going to stay there while the pizza place fails? Or are you going to move it somewhere else where maybe it has a better chance of succeeding? And that's sort of the, I think, what the mindset that holds football back is that we're the keepers of some sort of sacred flame, and we're not.
Yeah.
Columbus is not making the amount of money that it could in where it is right now. They can't get a new stadium built. It's not exactly an area where they're really concerned about building a new stadium. And it's in an area where, quite frankly, the economy has hurt a lot of things in Ohio. I was just in Ohio last week, and you still see a lot of the torn down buildings and the burned out factories and stuff. You know, Ohio, especially Columbus, doesn't have the money to build a stadium that the owners of the Columbus Crew want to have. So, whether nefariously or not, they had it in their minds that they wanted to move this club to a place that is, quite frankly, a more profitable city, and that's Austin, Texas. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Austin, Texas. I've never been there, but I know friends that went there, and it's a thriving millennial community.
Yeah.
A place that's literally perfect to put soccer in. It's the perfect city for it. They'll make more money, they'll be more successful, and they'll have a better chance to win. And I just feel like, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on expansion and all that, and the relocation of teams. I just feel like you're sort of, if you're in that sort of Save the Columbus Crew camp, I just feel like you're just not thinking about it in a way that's rational. It's more of this sort of irrational, again, keeper of the sacred flame stuff that I think it's the wrong way to approach the world. It's just that that's my opinion on it. I don't know what you guys think, but
yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's here in the U.S. It's common for teams to relocate. I mean, I know, maybe in Europe it's not that common for soccer clubs to just pack up and leave, cities they've been in for so long. But here in the U.S., I mean, it's become it doesn't happen as quite as often as it used to, but it's still part of accepted reality that teams move, for financial reasons or attendance wise or stadium reasons. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's Columbus. It's a Buckeye driven, city. It's all about Ohio State. I mean, obviously there's they got the Blue Jackets and they're, making some kind of profit, but when they go bad, they abandon, I've seen, the Columbus Blue Jackets play when they're an awful team and fans barely show up for it. So, I mean, I'm not familiar with the Crew. I'm not familiar with their record and how well they've played over the last, 5 seasons. But if they're a mediocre team to, bad team, then fans I know there aren't going to show up like they do for Ohio State, whether they're winning or losing. And that's just the reality of it. Some fans only show up when times are good, and there's times where if they're not winning, they're an irrelevant club.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like you said, Eddie. Like they're only, you don't appreciate what you got until it's on its way out, right? And I think that's a false narrative. I can compare that this entire topic to music, right? Like a lot of people who find out about artists brand new when they're still underground, And then once they go pop and get on the radio, they get mad. Oh, you weren't listening to J. Cole back in 2010. I'm like, so what? Aren't you happy for J. Cole that he extended his career and now he's like a global superstar? So it's that type of thing, and it's really hustling backwards when you think about it. But you look at like a team like Atlanta FC. I think they're a perfect example of that location matters, and like you said, Mark, about the millennial culture, and they're in tune with what's going on, and they're like Miami. David Beckham he's about to get a team out there. That's a good place to put an MLS team, and there was a bid going on here in Charlotte, North Carolina for a soccer team, and I was like, no. I just know that people here are not that interested in soccer, and that was going to be one of those things. If it came here, ticket sales would be low. It wouldn't be important. People in Charlotte only care about the Tar Heels, the Panthers, and a little bit of the Hornets now because they've become a bigger brand or whatever with Jordan as their owner. So again, it's important to be in tune, and I think that's why the PSG Jordan thing is important. Is they're in tune with what's going on. You just can't be making these moves willy nilly and without doing any research or being tone deaf to what's going on in the current climate in the world as it is right now. So that's just my take on it. But people are going to be mad about whatever. They're going to continue to nitpick, and that's just what it is.
And I think everybody, there's a lot of people that subscribe to the theory that everyone should think exactly the way that I do, or that if somebody's not thinking the way that I'm thinking, that somehow there's something wrong with them. Right. And I feel when it comes to a lot of these, and I think all these topics are sort of interconnected, which is like, I'm sure somebody somewhere thought that putting a hockey team in Atlanta was a good idea. Like, everybody remembers the Atlanta Thrashers. Like, that was a horrible idea. There should never have been a hockey team in Atlanta. Because why would you put a hockey team in Atlanta? You could put a hockey, there's certain places where if you put something there and there's not a lot around it, maybe it would work. I mean, I think you could say more about this maybe, John, but the Carolina Hurricanes, they're not in Charlotte, they're in Raleigh.
In Raleigh, yeah.
So they're the only professional sports team in Raleigh. So if you want to go see professional sports, you kind of have to go see the Hurricanes.
Right.
And if you go to Columbus, it's either the Blue Jackets or Ohio State. And Ohio State ain't moving anywhere because it's a college. And you look at the reason that European teams don't move, it's like Barcelona's not going to move from Barcelona.
Right.
Girona is not going to move from Girona. Where are they going to move to? The next town over? Oh, the next town over already has a soccer team. Yeah. When you have a situation where every city in your country has a team, you can't really move. All you can do is just like, if you're not making money, all you can do is be relegated.
Yeah.
So I almost like American system better, where it's like you have these teams that can actually, move around and benefit themselves as opposed to dying slow deaths. Like,
yeah, there's more flexibility for sure.
I mean, people remember back in the 1980s, Aston Villa was one of the biggest teams in the world.
Uh-huh.
But Birmingham isn't exactly one of the most metropolitan cities in England. So as time moved, time moved on, Birmingham wasn't the big hub of sports that it might have been before. So Aston Villa suffered. Like, that's just how time works. That's how history works. Yeah. And there are some teams that can overcome stuff like that economically. Like, Pittsburgh overcame it because, of all their success. And if we're talking about, think about it like this. Pittsburgh succeeded, Cleveland didn't. Why? They're pretty much 100 miles from each other. Both have the same sort of economic issues, but for some reason the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to win 4 championships and make a buttload of money, and the Cleveland Browns had to move to Baltimore. Like, that's how sports works, and I just feel like a lot of people are just trying to hold on so dearly to what they had as kids and what they had as young adults, and I think what's good about our generation is that I think we're willing to move on from stuff.
Yeah.
And, understand that these things are not permanent, and it's not going to be the way that it used to be. And Eddie, I think, me from New York, John from the Congo moving around to North Carolina, and you living in Southern California, I think we kind of understand the idea of how things change. Like, I think you were alive during all three name changes of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Yeah, I was conscious of the California Angels. Then they switched to the Anaheim Angels, and then they went to the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Tying it in with PSG, Artie Moreno changed to LA for marketing reasons, and he knew that he would get larger TV contracts, which are really big issues here in the States. When TV contracts are how these teams make their money. So he did that for marketing reasons, and there's still people who are upset that they switched from Anaheim. I didn't like it. I went myself, but I understand. I got where he was coming from. He wanted the team to gain the big bucks and not just be try to get on par with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like we said, that's what we're doing. That PSG is trying to do. They're trying to get on par with the Barcelonas of the world and the Real Madrids of the world. And I saw that firsthand here in LA. But I'm lucky enough to live in LA where not a lot of teams move. There's plenty of people for sports. The Clippers are trying to get their own stadium, and the Clippers are the only team that maybe people could do without. But for the most part, I mean, they're I don't know. The Clippers are.
Would you like the L.A. Clippers? No, we would not.
No. I mean, they've moved around from Buffalo. We're speaking of movies, so you're tying it in with moving. The Clippers have moved from Buffalo to San Diego to L.A. And now they're going to go. They're trying to get their own building in Inglewood, California, which is where the Rams are set to play.
Yes.
But the Clippers are just, they're sort of irrelevant.
In reference, how far is Inglewood outside of the Los Angeles Center?
The downtown area, I'd say with traffic, because there's always traffic in LA, I'd say about a 40-minute drive from downtown LA.
It's in the suburbs.
There is no public transport. I mean, there is the buses that run by there, but as far as a train or a rail system, there is none.
So they're not trying to recruit the inner city of Los Angeles to come out and go 40 miles to go watch.
That's what I was about to say. Who's going to go to Inglewood to watch the Clippers?
What I like about Staples Center, there's two main there's a subway, there's a train, and there's buses that will leave you at the doorstep at Staples Center. And as far as the Clippers are just. They're sort of irrelevant around here, but yeah, tying it in all, it's norm. I mean, people kind of accept that teams move around here, and I know in Europe that's a culture shock. But in reality, if your team's not making money, or the attendance is low, or the stadium is falling apart, relocation is always going to be an issue or a topic for any team.
And John, I'll bring this back to Charlotte. The Charlotte Hornets that are there right now were not the original Charlotte Hornets.
No, they were not. I think they got bought out by the NBA. They relocated them to New Orleans, where at the time New Orleans wasn't really interested in a basketball team, and they weren't that good. And we were bought by Bob Johnson. I think he owned BET at the time. And we were the Charlotte Bobcats.
The Bobcats were an expansion franchise, if I remember this right.
Yeah, they were. And Bob Johnson was part of that entire group. And Nelly, the rapper Nelly, he was part of that group as well. But people in Charlotte hated it. They was like, who are these? The Bobcats? What's this orange stuff? You know what I mean? Because there was so much nostalgia with the Hornets and the teal, right? And the history of a Muggsy Bogues and all of these legendary basketball players. And at that time, the team was competent, right? They were getting to the playoffs. They had all-star players, and they were good.
Grandmama, Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson. Yeah. We had Alonzo Mourning, and all these a bunch of Dale Curry, legendary basketball players on that team, and they were competent, and they just moved them out. And then, when Jordan took over the team, he took over the Bobcats, and, it was one of those things, just a general consensus, the community started speaking out. Not only is the Bobcats a terrible brand, the team sucks. We want to rejuvenate the city and the community and bring back the Hornets, you know what I mean? Because at that time, New Orleans, they were changing to the Pelicans, so the name was available again. And it was just, again, another smart business plan from Jordan's, because Jordan could have been stubborn and like, nah, we're going to stick with the Hornets, we're going to stick with the Bobcats and try to figure this thing out. But he brought that Hornets name back, we got the jerseys back and everything, and we have one of the better basketball courts in the NBA and the jersey schemes and all that stuff. And again, that stuff doesn't mean anything about them winning NBA championships, but it sure does bring the fans to the to the games, because I work part-time at the arena where the Hornets play, and when I first started there, we were still the Hornets. And just from there, and because I work security and I'm on the court, so I'm able to see how many people are in there. There's a vast difference with the attendance of when the Bobcats were there and how now the Hornets are back. People aren't even really coming for the players per se. It's just having the Hornets back. That means a lot. So, teams move and things change, but, it's like it's not very rare here in America for things like that to happen.
Yeah, and in New York, it's the teams are, at this point, they've pretty much stabilized. You're not, you have a little bit of movement here and there, but it's a perfect example of this is sometimes that stuff doesn't work. Like, I'll talk a little hockey here. I'll keep it brief. The New York Islanders, who won 4 Stanley Cups on the island in Nassau County at the Nassau County Coliseum, that place became a dump. It actually pretty much became a dump the minute they built it. It's like this is the weird thing about American sports stadiums is that sometimes they are actually out of date by the time they're built. And with the Nassau Coliseum, it was out of date pretty much by the time they built it. And it was so far behind that the ownership, Charles Wang of the Islanders, was trying to get a new stadium built in Nassau in Nassau County, but the Nassau County, the elected officials of Nassau County didn't want to pay the money for it to, redo the Nassau Coliseum or whatever. So they decided, well, now that the New Jersey Nets have moved to Brooklyn to become the Brooklyn Nets, because another out-of-date stadium, it was across from the old Meadowlands, the Izod Center, whatever it was called, the New Jersey Nets weren't selling any tickets or making any money, so they decided to go to Brooklyn. The Islanders joined them in Brooklyn. And that building, the Barclays Center, was not built for hockey, so all the sightlines suck, and nobody wanted to come out from Long Island on the LIR to get to Brooklyn, so now they're trying to move out of Brooklyn and go back to Long Island, where they're going to have a stadium in Belmont Park. I say all of these things because I think that people have to understand that with all this business behind it and all these decisions that aren't just made for on-the-field purposes, that are made for off-the-field purposes. And I think so many times in European sports, and European soccer specifically, a lot of the teams do a really good job of trying to build the wall between business and, professional. Like the business product that we keep in the background behind the curtain, and the on-field product that we show. And PSG are that team that has shattered that glass ceiling. They've ripped that curtain. I should say, to not mix my analogies, they've ripped the curtain down. They have, in a way that I think has been somewhat admirable, in that they're not lying to people. They have shown what the business of football is, and they've embraced it. And they've embraced the fact that getting a sponsorship with Jordan is almost as important as winning games. Like, that is sacrilegious to people. that any of that stuff matters to them. All they care about is the winning on the field. And you talk about for years, when PSG are putting out the new Nike kits, and they're like, oh, I wish we had the old kits. I wish they would be designed like it was 1994 again. And yeah, there are a lot of things I would like, to have now that we had in 1994. In some ways, we all want it to be 1994 again. But it's ludicrous to think that because PSG have exposed the business of football for what it is, that somehow makes them the bad guy. And I think that because they have done these collaborations with Jordan, and they're going to get a new sponsor for their shirts, which I think is going to be, I think when they do that, I think that's going to almost rival what they did with Jordan. I think they're going to go to absurd lengths to make that presentation a big deal, and it's going to piss people off all over again.
Oh, yeah.
And no matter how many times PSG loses in the Champions League, you know what? At this point, they're becoming bulletproof. And I'll put it like this, Eddie. Did the 6-1 prevent Michael Jordan from doing a deal with PSG? No. Did Real Madrid beating PSG over 2 legs fairly convincingly stop Jordan from doing a deal with PSG? Nope. Didn't stop him. Not one bit. So we try to think that all this on-the-field stuff matters more than it really does. It matters a bit. But PSG have had their most successful financial years after humiliating Champions League losses. So apparently it doesn't mean all that much. You know what I mean? Like, people were saying after the Real Madrid stuff, oh, Neymar can't possibly stay here. Of course he's going to go to Real Madrid because he can't win with this PSG team. Nope, still here. Still making money. I want people to understand that so badly, and I don't know if I ever express it well enough, but I want them to understand that so badly that it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. And as long as PSG are running the business the way they're running it, they're going to have a chance to win the Champions League pretty much every year.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that. As long as we're winning in Ligue 1, I'm good if we put up competitive efforts.
Yeah, this is just long-term financial health, and like we touched on, this helps PSG not become a Malaga where they're good for 7 years once the Qatar money dries up. No, this is about maintaining a long, healthy financial profit for years to come, because like I said, PSG is just 40, they're a middle-aged club. They're 40-something years old, and I like that, the Qataris are thinking, okay, we're not going to be able to put a lot of money into this club. Let's venture out and get sponsors that A, expose our brand, and B, provide long-term financial health for us. That way we can make a profit and we can continue spending the amount of money we spend on players. So it's just, people don't like to people want it right now. People want things right now, but they don't like to hear, oh, this is going to help us down the road. That's just one of the aspects of this deal that, people need to understand.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. Also, we are now into the NFL season. Of the three of us, only I have a team that is yet to win a game. And I'm not happy necessarily about that, although I will say that the Giants at least looked competent. They look like a competently run organization for the first time in a year. And I say maybe even a year and a half, because those games where they were in the playoffs under Ben McAdoo were a bit of a mess. They look professional. They look like, everybody, well, let's put it this way. Everyone except for Eric Flowers looks professional. Like, they look like they deserve to be on the football field. Eric Flowers does not deserve to be on the football field. Last night I was watching the Montreal Alouettes against the BC Lions, because actually the best thing about my ESPN Plus subscription is that I get to watch the weird Canadian Football League. And I just find it fascinating to watch it, because it is so bizarre in the sense that everything's the same except nothing is the same. Like, it's the same game, exactly the same game, except like every rule is slightly different. So instead of getting 3 downs, you get 2 downs. Instead of having to have a 100-yard field, it's a 110-yard field. Instead of the challenge flags being red, they're yellow. Instead of the flags being yellow, they're red. Like, just small, stupid little differences between the games that it's almost like some weird Bizarro world. But I enjoy it, and it's fun, I am for those who may call me a front runner for rooting for PSG. I am rooting for the Montreal Alouettes. They are terrible. But the whole point of this Shaggy Dog story is that Eric Flowers could probably be the starting left tackle for the Montreal Alouettes or the BC Lions. He cannot be the starting tackle for the New York Football Giants. He had like 3 penalties. He almost took a safety in the end zone on a hold, which is like the ultimate sign of bad line play. If you're taking holding penalties in the end zone, Jacksonville's defense is really good, but I was okay with what the Giants did, and they got a big game tomorrow. They got to beat Dallas, but Eddie, you have a Cincinnati Bengals team that, although they've beaten Indianapolis and Baltimore, which are okay, fine, they look half decent.
Yeah. Yeah, they look the front 4 defense.
You there, Eddie?
Dunlap and Geno Atkins are I believe they're really they're hell. Yeah. I said Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins are really underrated, and for me, everybody looks competent right now. The offensive line, which is a really big issue. I mean, I'm not happy that Billy Price, got injured. I'm hoping he's okay. Our offensive line doesn't have that depth. So any injury to the offensive line, I hold my breath. And then Joe Mixon got injured, so he's going to have arthroscopic knee surgery, so he's out for 2 weeks. At least that's what I read. He's out for 2 weeks. And, the receiving core looks great. Andy Dalton looks, I love Andy Dalton, but man, every week I prepare for either. He's your classic Jekyll and Hyde. Sometimes he looks like an elite quarterback that can, potentially go win. I mean, we know that nowadays you don't need the elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, and Jesus, I watching that game on Thursday, I do not know what they thought about handing him that much money.
Yeah.
The guy is but so far, everybody looks good. I mean, there's still a couple of bonehead mistakes Sean Williams getting tossed out, thankfully, he made the play on Thursday to, preserve the win. So he made up for that. And it's just, everything looks good right now. I'm still, it's just 2 weeks in. Obviously, you can't win the division, but you can lose the division early on. So I'm just, holding my breath. I think we play Carolina next, so that one should be a really good match.
That's a good game. That's it. Carolina, I think Carolina's a half decent team.
Yeah, I want to talk.
Completely off topic though. Just before we do that, if you're watching NBC right now and you're watching the Manchester United Watford game, remember if you've ever had this happen where you put all of your white undershirts into like the dark clothes in the washer and they all get like.
Oh, is that what you're hearing?
Look at the Manchester United kits. They look like they were put in with. It's like the whites were put in with the colored shirts.
Yeah,
look at these things.
You throw in one accident. You throw in your whites and you accidentally throw in one red sock in there or something like that, and
it's over for that shirt.
Yeah, that's how they look.
If you're gonna go with pink, go with actual pink, not whatever the fuck this is.
It's an off pink.
The fact that Paul Pogba has to go out in public with this is just I don't feel I feel bad for the guy. Who thought this was a good idea?
Well, they're Adidas.
Yes,
is it one of those like I think was it Real Madrid or Barcelona? They have like a eco-friendly jersey. Is it one of those?
No, it's off pink. It is. It's literally like the lightest shade of pink you could get. It is. It looks like a dirty shirt.
Nah, I'm watching Valencia and Betis see my guy Lo Celso and Guedes and Batshuayi. So I'm not. Yeah.
All right. So what were you going to say, Eddie? Before I so rudely
interrupted? I wanted to go on to John. John had the fortune of watching that Detroit Lions' awful team against
For the
his
record,
older Sam Darnold.
For the record, I was at that game.
Yeah. Dude, before I get to my team, the Jets, it's, I feel like there's been a track record of Bill Belichick's, his coaches, they haven't went on to do so well after they've gotten the head coaching job, and the Lions looked unprepared, right? Like, and that's why I'm not really putting that much stock. Like, it's great. It looks great for the Jets, but I want to see us play somebody else because they looked unprepared totally on all three phases of the game, and it was great for me as a Jets fan. But man, that was some terrible football from the Detroit Lions. I don't know what the hell that was.
That remind me, like what Matt Patricia just reminds me of. He reminds me of like a guy who is sitting in the stands who had way too many drinks in the parking lot, had all the gear and stuff on, and just decided, you know what? I'm going to try to jump on this field and pretend to be a coach and see how long it takes for them to notice that I'm out here.
To notice that, right?
And he's like, here, hey, Jimmy, give me that pencil. You put that in his ear, make him look official. He has a laminated thing in front of him. I always made fun of McAfee because he had the big laminated menu of 4 plays. Same thing, like it looked like the Lions. They had the laminated sheet of 4 plays on it, and the Jets knew every one of the 4 plays.
But I think what's the guy Nick Wright? He's on Fox Sports. He does the morning show with Chris Carter. He pointed that out. Like, this guy has a pencil in his ear with the laminate playbook. Where the fuck are you gonna write on the laminate, bro? Like, so he's really just out there looking the part, and like he's fooling everybody. But it's weird because like I don't think he like carries himself as a coach, right? Like, and I think people are they're gonna be some articles written about how he shows his emotion on his face. He didn't look interested. He has a cap on backwards. He has a big beard. Like, they're not gonna let him rock too long with that entire look.
I think trim his beard.
I know. I think I read he was making the veterans in training camp. I think every time they messed up, run laps, and that's one way to lose the locker room. Like, you don't make your veterans do high school. I feel like he's coaching college or high school, and veterans aren't gonna stand by and go and do laps if they screw up. They're gonna be like, well, who is this guy? You know? I think if he continues like this, I don't see him lasting more than maybe a year and a half.
I don't care who you are, Bill Belichick or whatever. You don't have Tom Brady. Matthew Stafford is not Tom Brady. So, like, I agree. I think that's a big part of it. There's a veteran locker room they have there. They're not about to let him come in there and try to be Bill Belichick and do all these things. Like, nah, that's not going to work. He's going to have to earn that respect.
Yes, apparently Matt Patricia is English for Unai Emery. So
that's a good one.
But similarities. Yeah. There's some similarities with that. Just, again, a guy coming in, thinks he's a little better than he is, and I feel like that locker room's going to tell him how good he really is at some point. But the Jets, I will say, what I like about the Jets is that they seem like they've finally gotten into competent organization place. Like, they didn't fire Todd Bowles. They could have fired him last year. They had like 2 5-11 seasons. They could have fired him. They didn't. They stayed with him. They have a quarterback now who I think is one of the best game managers I've probably ever seen in my life. And he probably will be one of the best game managers. I don't think his arm is good enough to be like Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or Peyton Manning, but he'll give you a chance to win games. He'll give you a chance to win playoff games. And as long as you don't sort of screw it up and make it more complicated than it needs to be, the Jets can invest on the defensive side of the ball. They can be a wild card team every year. They can maybe win a division or two. And they'll give themselves an opportunity to be in the Super Bowl hunt. You can't really complain about what the Jets are doing. I like to try to be snarky about the Jets, but they're doing it the right way. You can't say anything about it. It's good business from them.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Like, I don't expect Sam Darnold to be this great savior or anything, but man, a competent quarterback, like Eddie just pointed out, you don't need the best guy at the quarterback position to win a Super Bowl or to be good, right? And we finally have somebody who is not going to go out there and make a ton of mistakes. Now, granted, that first throw was the worst throw I've ever seen. It was just not smart throwing back on your opposite side of the field, and you kind of floated it. He didn't really put any velocity to it, but a kid that young to have the amnesia to completely forget about that and go on to have a phenomenal game, was really, really impressive for me. And to me, I think we're a more complete team. Sam Darnold aside, I think our defense, our safeties, those young guys with May and Jamal Adams, they're flying around out there, and we have some good corners. And, we lost Muhammad Wilkerson and Snacks Harrison on that D-line, but, we still have the big cat, I forget the guy's name, Leonard Williams, and we have him down there, and then we have some other guys that we can go get now that we have a structure and a stability within the offense. And, that's, for a Jets fan, a competent quarterback is really all we can ask for right now. And that bodes well for us, so we'll see what happens. But, yeah, it felt good. But, yeah, the Lions were some shit, man.
Yeah, they got a good team. They got a good team all the way around. And let's go around the league a little bit. Let's start with who do you want to start with, Eddie? Any teams in the NFL stand out?
Let's start. Let's start with America's team. Man, they were awful at. Has the Dak Prescott, magic finally word off that I don't think they can. I mean, he's not what they thought he was going to be, and plus the O-line isn't what they used to be. So, you got them next. You got them next, Mark. So I'm pretty sure you got them next. I'm pretty sure.
I'm fairly confident. Again, it's Dallas on the road, so you can't be too confident. But if they can put 8 guys in the box and force whoever Dallas is trotting out at receiver this week to beat you, I guess if you're going to get beat that way, you get beat that way. Although the Giants secondary doesn't always give me hope. But you got Odell Beckham, you have Saquon Barkley. Dallas is defensively they're okay, they're not great. The Giants should win this game. They're to me right now, maybe not in 10 weeks, but right now they're the better team. And they should win this game. But again, it's the Giants, and they've been mediocre for 5 years, so I'm waiting to sort of see if the talent can kind of carry them through this game, because they're going to have trouble blocking people. They're going to have trouble blocking people the rest of the year, but this isn't as tough a job as Jacksonville was. So I'm okay with that. How bad are the Buffalo Bills?
That's what I wanted to talk about.
As Bomani Jones calls him, the Peter Man.
The Peter Man.
The Peter Man was having all types of problems in week 1. He's been benched for Josh Allen.
They're going to throw that kid to the Wolves. I feel really bad for him.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel bad for Josh Allen because, obviously he's not as good as advertised, right? With the fact that they watched that game last year against San Diego where Peterman went out there and threw 5 picks, and they still proceeded to start him this season, right? Yeah. So it speaks to how bad they handled Tyrod Taylor, and then it speaks to their analysis or kind of how they read Josh Allen, or if he was just the next available, the best quarterback available at the time of the draft. But man, for me, them going to Josh Allen next week, that's another one of those locker room things we're talking about. Doug McDermott has to look at those guys in the locker room and be like, all right, I'm not going to put y'all in this position and put the Peterman out there again. When we might not be sure about Josh Allen, but I'm not going to do y'all like that again. So it's one of those things. He has to look those dudes in the eye and be like, all right, I'm not about to do them like this. And it's just a terrible situation. They handled the Tyrod situation so poorly, and now they're out there with Josh Allen who's unproven and the Peterman.
It's incredible because Tyrod Taylor to Rod Taylor is exactly what the Bills needed. Like, they didn't need a spectacular quarterback at this moment. This is a team that didn't make the playoffs for 20 years. Like, I remember the last time they were in the playoffs, it was the year 2000. I was 9 years old. Or, no, I was 8, I think. I might have been 8 years old at the time.
Yeah.
Watching the Motor City Miracle between the Bills and the Titans, they hadn't been to the playoffs since. They just needed a guy to be competent.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Tyrod Taylor is a guy who doesn't throw picks, who keeps you in games. He's not spectacular, but he's fine for what you need him to be. And they're messing around with the Peterman, and they're bringing in, Josh Allen, who is, on that same show, I think Pablo Torre was talking about, he never is thrown for more than 60% completion percentage in his entire career. From junior high to junior college, never got more than 60% completion percentage. And it says a lot about, and I guess it's not, I guess we should bring this up every time. Colin Kaepernick is still unemployed. Yeah. There's still a lot of quarterbacks in this league that could do better than him, or do better than what the Bills have. It's just sort of shameful that they seriously thought that they could throw the Peterman out there and just like win 8-9 games. It's almost insulting, really. Like,
yeah. It's funny too. Their next game is against the Chargers. That might be a reason why they benched the Peterman. Because that man might have flashbacks of what happened there, and we're not going to do that to him.
No, he needs to take a long vacation.
The only thing I'm looking forward to watching from the Bills is just the Bills Mafia. Just probably going through more tables than they normally would, because they're going to have to watch this stuff for the next 15 weeks. So
they have a chance of going 2-14, 1-15. They got a real shot at it, because they are just not any good. Let's talk about the Oakland Raiders, and let's talk about Khalil Mack. Another. I guess we've talked in this podcast about people who are behind the times. John Gruden. Traded one of the best defensive players in the league for essentially a bag of balls. I mean, 2 first-round picks, but they're going to be in the 20s. And they're probably not going to do well with those picks anyway. And, yeah, now you're the Oakland Raiders. You have no Khalil Mack. You have no defensive team at all. Literally, you just are basically playing nobodies on defense. And Derek Carr is not all that great. Like, what's the plan here? Like, anyone have an idea what John Gruden's plan is? Because I would love to know.
From what I gathered from reading and just hearing, I think they're just saying, you know what, we'll build a team for Vegas. I think they have some goodwill in Vegas. So I think they're going to slowly, build a team for when they move to Vegas, whether it be next year, because their lease with the Coliseum is up. So I don't know if they're going to renew it for that, or they're just going to move to Vegas after the season and play it at UNLV or I don't know, like Minnesota did. Meanwhile, their arena was their stadium was being constructed. But I don't know. I honestly don't know. From what I gathered, also is that the Raiders are one of the most. They have the poorest owner of all the owners. Usually all the owners in the NFL make their money in something else, whether it be oil or some kind of business venture. Mark Davis is, Al Davis, he made his money from the Raiders, and Mark Davis only makes his money from the Raiders. He has no other venture of business. So, they gave Gruden a buttload of money, and I think they just didn't have the money to pay for, all the upfront guarantee bonuses that they needed to pay Khalil Mack. And so they rather had just taken the draft picks rather than, kind of admitting.
I genuinely think, John, that this may go down as one of the worst contracts in the history of anything.
Absolutely.
Like, not even sports, in the history of movies and music and Broadway theater and interpretive dance. This is going to be one of the worst contracts in the history of the world, because you're literally paying a guy 10 times the market value for a job that you could pay pretty much any replacement level NFL coach to do. What does John Gruden bring to the Raiders that, let's say, I don't even know, throw any random Pat Shurmur, or what does he bring that's any different? Like, for real, like, I'm struggling to wrap my mind around this, John.
I have no idea, because I think we've talked about this before on Twitter about, like, what has he done since coaching the Buccaneers, right? Like, even while he was coaching the Buccaneers, like, there's nothing there that it's sort of the Mauricio Pochettino thing, where it's like, what have you won? Right? And for me, in 2018, it's what have you done for me lately? The guy hasn't done anything but sit there and commentate on Monday night and speak good about every single player. Even the subpar players, he would be like, this guy's great. He's one of the most fascinating football players. Like, it's like, dude, what? Like, what have you really done? So this guy here is going to be something special. Everybody's great on Monday night, but to me, the Khalil Mack contract thing. If you're going to pay someone, it's got to be Khalil Mack. Who did he decide to pay? David Carr. I don't think David Carr is that good, me personally. I think
you know why you don't think David Carr is good? Because you're referring to his older brother, David Carr, as opposed to the younger brother, Derek Carr.
I don't think Derek Carr is that good either. I'm glad. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. But no, he's definitely better than his brother. But he's not the franchise quarterback that is being advertised here. And again, what we saw in that match, in that game against the Packers with the Bears, Khalil Mack had one of the greatest games ever until the Rodgers heroics, and that's why you pay him and you don't pay Derek Carr. And I think Gruden said something like Derek Carr is the best quarterback he's ever coached, and that's a shot to Rich Gannon. You remember Rich Gannon?
Yeah, well,
it's like, all right,
or Brad
man.
Johnson.
Brad Johnson. Like, all right, man. It's like, what is really going on here? And I think the Raiders really put themselves behind the 8 ball, because, John Gruden can make these moves because he's signed for 50 years, right? He can look at draft picks and look long term. Those dudes in the locker room, they trying to win now. So,
And here's what I think is going to happen, though, because this is what happened, if you've ever heard the story of Bobby Bonilla. The New York Mets player who signed
have a Bobby Bonilla day.
Yes, who signed this multi-year mega $1 million contract that the Mets were able, when they released him, to extend so that they wouldn't have to pay him all of the money up front. They would pay it in installments. So they're still paying Bobby Bonilla.
They're still paying him.
They're still paying him. So what's going to happen is John Gruden's going to get fired after 3 years. They're going to have $70 million to pay him. And they're not going to have $70 million to pay him. So what they're going to do is they're going to put him on an annuity. And for the next 30 years, until the end of John Gruden's life, he's going to be getting paid like $3.5 million a year to just finish out the end of that contract without having to pay it all up front. Which would be hysterical that we're going to have John Gruden Day in 40 years from now when John Gruden's still getting, when the John Gruden estate is still getting paid $3.5 million a year.
It's the most ridiculous thing ever, really.
I would say Patriots look what they're going to look like. They look fine. I mean, I don't know how good Houston is. I think Deshaun Watson's good. I don't know how good Houston is. I'm trying to think who else. Who else stood out to you guys?
I don't know if it was the Raiders being that bad, but the Rams, they look as advertised. I mean, they're like that sexy pick to go win the Super Bowl. Everything, they have Aaron Donald and Dominic Sue. Like, man, they spent a lot of money this offseason. Jared Goff is looking like he's, on that borderline stage of taking that, going from really good or very good to elite. And Todd Gurley is Todd Gurley. So I mean, the Rams, I get the local flavor here, and man, they're looking as advertised. It's just one game. I'm not going to try to overreact, but they're looking as advertised.
I think Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters is one of the best cornerback combos in the league right now as well, and picking those guys up was very smart. And they kind of it's a risky move if you think about they're deemed as problematic players, quote unquote. But real football players, they don't care about any of that. They know these guys are going to fight, and they're going to be out there, and they're going to be dogs every play, and that's what you want as a teammate. So I think from that aspect, those are good pickups, and they might have one of the best quarterback tandems in all of football right now.
If I gave you an over-under for how many games Jameis Winston is going to start this year, and I put that number at 8, would you go over or under?
Ooh. Under. Ryan Fitzpatrick looked. I think it was Jamel Hill who tweeted out that Ryan Fitzpatrick has this cycle of being really good.
That was a great
tweet. Getting paid, and then he starts underperforming or he's just irrelevant again, and then he cops up again, performs really good. And then he gets
because of that reason, I'm gonna say. He's gonna play more than 8 games. Once Jameis is back, it's his job. Because again, I'm a Jets fan. I know Ryan Fitzpatrick all too well. He does this all the time. When he's not the named starter, he plays phenomenal. And then as soon as you give him the job, it's deer in the headlights, and he plays like shit. Like, we had a chance to make the playoffs 2 years ago in the last game against the Bills, and he went up there and stunk the place up. So Fitzpatrick is Fitzpatrick. He's a Harvard guy, smart. He's a good dude. He's a gritty guy, but don't look for him long term. He's gonna fool everyone. Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans are gonna be crying in about a week or two. Just wait for it.
And I even say that because if either way, whether it looks like Fitzpatrick can hold it down for the season or not, I don't know how long Jameis Winston's lifespan in Tampa is. The guy has had his chances, and he's been good at times, but I wouldn't say Jameis Winston's been great by any stretch. And I think it depends on Tampa Bay making a decision whether they're going to pay him or not.
I think more so it's not even an on-field thing. I think it's he gets in trouble too much off the field.
That's what I mean. You pay him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I think if anything, that's what's going to hinder him. He's not, like you said, he hasn't been that great when he's playing, and then you add the off the field issues. It's a little risky to give him that big contract. He hasn't showed enough to me.
All right, Team Le'Veon or Team Steelers?
I'm Team Le'Veon.
All the way.
One, because it helps my team, but but I mean, running backs, they got to get paid as fast as they can because they're out of all positions in the NFL, they're the most disposable ones. And football, there's no guaranteed contracts. If nobody doesn't know, there's no guaranteed contracts. So teams if they don't want to pay you anymore, they just cut you. So if you don't have a large guaranteed part of your contract, whatever money that was, in the contract, you're never going to see that again. So I'm always for players trying to get their money and trying to get as much guaranteed because there is no, they're if they don't have as much guaranteed their contracts, they're not going to make that money again. And like I said, running backs out of all the positions in football have the shortest of lifespans.
Yeah, and then the guy who comes in behind him, Connor, he had a pretty good game, but don't let that fool you either. He's no Le'Veon Bell. And at the end of the day, like Eddie says, these guys they have a short lifespan in the NFL. Le'Veon Bell, it's important to realize he's been good. Like, I think his first year in the league was shaky. Ever since then, he's been phenomenal. So him and his agent aren't only looking at it for what he's done now. It's what he's done in the past for the Steelers when they weren't paying him. So yeah, he's got to get paid. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, and I think what Le'Veon's doing here is really important because if I were the players, I would be strongly, and I mean really strongly, angling in my next collective bargaining agreement to get rid of the franchise tag.
Absolutely.
Or at least limit it to one use. Because right now you can franchise a player twice. And I just feel like it really is an albatross of a thing. And no one else, I think, really has it in sport. There's no other sport that has this. that I can tell. I think there's some arbitration stuff in baseball, but that's more particular. But you can't just say a free agent. You can't just basically deny someone their free agent rights because you have a franchise tag. Like, it's so arbitrary and ridiculous, and the player has no say over it. So if you can't come to an agreement or something that the team likes, they can just franchise you. And yeah, you're making $14 million a year, but you're making it for 1 year. A third of that is going away to taxes, so now you're down to about $11.10. You have to pay for all the other crap that you've bought because you're a superstar millionaire athlete. So in reality, what are you left with of that contract by the end of the year? You're left with what? $3-4 million of it? And then you tear your ACL that year, and you're never making that money again. So if I'm Le'Veon Bell, I'm like, I'm not risking that.
No.
On a team that has now franchised me twice. Because obviously if they franchise you twice, they clearly want to keep you short term, but they don't want to keep you long term. So why throw your body out there for a team that doesn't want to keep you long term? And I get where the players are pissed off about it, because, they don't, I don't think they're seeing the big picture in all of this, but Le'Veon needs to take care of Le'Veon. I think he'll get money from somewhere else. There'll be a team that will pay him that thinks he'll be the piece that gets them over the top, and you'll get to that point where he'll make his money and he'll be able to make enough of it where he can keep some away and he can have a successful retirement.
I mean, from the player's perspective, though, it's like you would think they would understand it if no one else understands it, and that's why I'm kind of confused why some of those players came out and were kind of pissed at Le'Veon for not showing up. But at the end of the day, if anybody, for me, I would have at least thought that they would understand. But at the end of the day, Le'Veon, he got to take care of himself. Like, he's put his body on the line. Ben Roethlisberger is getting older, so they're gonna run the ball more, and they're gonna look for Le'Veon to provide that. And he not only is he the best running back, he's one of the best receivers in the league. The dude is out of this world from an athletic standpoint, and he's been underpaid for too long. The franchise tag was the only time that he's gotten a bump in his salary and earned guaranteed money, but that doesn't make up for what he's done in the past.
And on that, I think we'll leave it. Thank you, guys.